And if they can do this to President Trump, what do you think they could do to the rest of us? We'll have full breaking coverage all night long. Here now with more. Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz is with us. Gregg, we'll start with you. If you look at the Presidential Records Act, which is what we're told this is all about, I mean, I assume there's a chance that maybe classified documents were taken to Mar-a-Lago. I understood from reports that there was a process that they were they were going through. They said they're willing to give all those things back. Why didn't they just say, can we come over and take a look at what you have and make sure that there's no classified documents here? Just like, why didn't they say to Peter Navarro, his attorney, have your client report at 8 a.m. at this location, or Paul Manafort, or Roger Stone? Why the big show only when it's a conservative?
Because it's Donald Trump. And this is the weaponization for political purposes by the FBI and the Department of Justice. You're right, Sean, when you identify the Presidential Records Act of 1978, which is far from a model of clarity. And in fact, it's one of the more opaque laws you'll ever read. One of the problems with it is that it gives discretion and authority to the incumbent president to decide what constitutes presidential papers. He may identify, exclude, and dispose of presidential papers. And you point out the classified nature, allegedly, of some of the documents identified by the National Archives. They're not a competent agency to recognize classified documents because a president is the ultimate authority in declassifying documents. He may do so with a wave of his hand without notification to the National Archives. So I think what you're really seeing here is an abuse of power by the FBI, and absolutely both Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and the FBI Director Christopher Wray signed off on this.
They would have to have signed off on this,
yes.
Greg. You would agree with that, correct?
Oh, absolutely. They signed. I mean, look, no agent or official at the FBI is going to undertake a raid of this magnitude on a former president of the United States without going to the individuals at the very top. That's Garland and Wray.
All right, let's talk about two other cases, Professor Dershowitz, and then I'll get your overall view on this particular raid that went on earlier today. James Comey was accused pretty much of something very similar, if you recall. If you remember the case of Sandy Berger. Sandy Berger went into the National Archives. He literally shoved documents down into his crotch, in his backside, into his socks, and walked out with those documents. But then everybody in the media, every Democrat, he was just sloppy, very sloppy. As he shoved it down his pants, he was sloppy. You know, he didn't mean to take them with him. And everybody bought that excuse. So this therein brings up the double standard issue. What are your thoughts?
Well, definitely, there is a double standard. We've seen so many instances of allegedly classified material being compromised. The key point that everybody's missing here is that Donald Trump was not in Mar-a-Lago. So there was no reason not to issue a subpoena, returnable tomorrow, so that there's no claim that Trump could have destroyed anything. This should have been a subpoena, not a search warrant. If it is a search warrant, it has to have a high level of cause demonstrating that the evidence would have been destroyed. Not only that, but under the law, if you seize a safe, you don't go into the safe. You have to get a special warrant to get into the safe, and you have to prove that the material in the locked safe would have been destroyed. So it seems to me that they have violated the rules of the Justice Department. They have gone after both a former president and a future candidate, and they darn well better have smoking gun proof, which I don't see happening. And clearly, there's been a double standard here. But even if it was a single standard, it's not good enough. You don't get a warrant unless a subpoena won't suffice. In a democratic rule of law country, you do it legitimately. You go to the lawyer, you say, by tomorrow, I want that safe delivered to the Justice Department. I want these documents turned over. And unless you can demonstrate that there was a very substantial chance they would have been maliciously destroyed, which would have been a serious, serious crime. I mean, that would be a serious crime. That's Nixon. And there's no evidence that that happened here.
It isn't, but, you know, how, I guess what everybody's wondering, especially in light of what we went through for 3 years, Greg, at some point, when do you say the abuse of power, the corruption, the witch hunt, to quote a famous best-selling book, that this is focused on one man and one man only, and a whole double standard exists, and nobody else is ever held accountable for either the exact law, similar sets of circumstances. I know it was different with Comey, but similar. The same with Hillary, the 33,000 emails, the dirty dossier, the FISA applications, Sandy Berger. You run through the list, and nothing ever happens if you're not a conservative or a Republican or a Trump supporter.
Yeah. Let's just take one of those examples, Hillary Clinton. Her home in Chappaqua was never raided, even though she maintained a private server there, upon which she downloaded classified top-secret documents, thereby jeopardizing national security and violating the espionage not once or 10 times, but roughly 100 times, accounting for the number of classified documents that she essentially stole and, as I say, jeopardized national security to hacks. And we, in fact, have pretty solid evidence that her server was hacked and foreign agencies retrieved American top-secret documents because of her actions. Was she ever prosecuted? No. James Comey stood in front of television cameras and he identified all the crimes she committed and then did a pirouette in the course of 5 seconds and said, but no reasonable prosecutor would ever bring such a case. Thousands of reasonable prosecutors would have loved to have brought that case. And besides, James Comey isn't the prosecuting authority. He usurped the power of the Attorney General. That's just one example of the double standard that exists with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. All right,
Where
if you stay there, Greg, go ahead, Professor.
I don't think you use search warrants and prosecutions to go after political enemies. I've just written a whole book on that called The Price of Principle, where I go into the whole issue of why you don't use partisan considerations to go after political enemies. That's what happens in banana republics. That's what happens in third world countries. That's not supposed to happen in the United States. It was right not to go after Hillary Clinton because she was a candidate for president. You need a much higher standard, but you can't apply one standard to Hillary Clinton and another standard to Donald Trump. That's impermissible in a democracy.
It would not have been a political pursuit against Hillary Clinton because it occurred during the Obama administration and the Attorney General there. She should have been prosecuted then.
All right, I'm going to leave it right there. All right, thank you both. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.